Hey, welcome everybody to Training Thursday. I'm excited to come on and talk about this topic because this is actually one of my favorite things to do. If you're new around here, I am Wendy and I am the success doula, and I gently guide healers, therapists, and transformational entrepreneurs through the process of birthing their business. So as I said, I'm here going to talking about brain dumping. I don't know if you have ever heard of the book Getting Things Done by David Allen. It's definitely one of those top 10 productivity books that most businesses know about. It's actually, I learned about it long time ago in my sales, when I had a sales job. Our whole entire team read that book and then tried to implement different things from the book into our sales process, right? So anyways, there's things I've picked that book up here and there. So I've never been able to quote unquote do the book exactly as it's outlined. But what I have learned through the years is that there's certain things that are in that book that are just amazing for people that find themselves procrastinating, getting overwhelmed, feeling frazzled, frustrated, not sure what to do, have ADHD, and really the list goes on, because it really is an amazing process to help you get things done. There's a reason why it's called Getting Things Done. All right, I just want to check over on the group and see if anyone's here. If anyone is here, if you want to post a comment, I should be able to see it, but we'll see about that. Anyways, so as I said, I love this. So I call it brain dumping. In the book, they call it capture, but I have used a brain dumping process. I've read about brain dumping from other people too. If you've ever done a bullet journal, there's lots of entries on how to do brain dumping using a bullet journal. And that's actually another one of my tools. I use that religiously every day for a year. I made a commitment to myself to use my bullet journal and journal every single day, and it literally changed my life. So if you've never done that, I actually highly suggest you make that commitment to yourself, because it's amazing what you will learn about yourself when you write to yourself every single day, just being able to get those thoughts out there. And that kind of leads into now brain dumping. So the whole entire purpose of brain dumping is to get your thoughts out of your head and onto a system that you will be able to utilize. Now, my absolute favorite way of using brain dumping is into Asana. But with that said, I literally have like 20 notebooks all around me at all times. So I'm definitely a big notebook person. There's certain processes when it comes to brainstorming. I 100% believe in using pen and paper because of the way it activates your brain. If you're joined on the social media strategy sessions, or you're joining next week, I talk about this because it's really important that you print out the workbook and then write in it, because you want to activate the areas of the brain that are going to help you think the most. Even though the workbook was designed as a PDF that you can type into, the brainstorming process is essential. Or not essential, but it just works a lot better if you can actually write on it. Obviously, if you have something that prevents you from doing that, typing into it is also a very good solution. But back to brain dumping. So whether you're using a notebook to get started, or you are going directly into Asana or Trello or whatever list processing, task processing system you use, remember the Milk, Evernote, there's a whole bunch that I've used throughout the years, but I don't even think they're around anymore, so I can't even, like, Wunderlist, I'm pretty sure that one's gone. That was actually a really good one. But anyways, I digress. So there are so many technological applications to be able to manage your tasks. But the process of brain dumping is one of the key components in doing this, because you can do brain dumping and forget about the rest of it as long as you have a system in place to be able to capture. That's the first step of getting things done, right? Capture all of your quote unquote open tabs in your head. Because what happens is, if we have our information just in notebooks, so I'm going to push right now for technology on this. As I said, I love Asana, and if you're in the Success Creator Academy, there are tutorials, or some tutorials on how to do this, and there's more coming on how to capture your content and how to structure it and organize it in Asana. So that is definitely my favorite tool of choice. But as I said, any of the other ones will work. But the key is to do the brain dumping and then also capture it. So that's what I'm going to be talking about here. And I'm going to talk about the pros and cons of doing it with paper first and then going straight into Asana or going to Asana and how to really kind of use them together. So first off, what you want to do is you want to just set aside like 10 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever much time you've got, but usually even just 10 minutes is good. Although you may find that once you start doing it, next thing you know, it's been a long time. I'm a big fan of Pomodoro, so I actually will set an entire Pomodoro for nothing but capturing and collecting all of the thoughts that are in my head and putting it into there. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to sit down and you're going to just list out every single thing that you think of something that you have to do. Now, it doesn't have to make sense. So this is a very, very important aspect of it. It does not need to make sense at all when you're typing it or writing it down. So you can say, schedule my social media post, create a reel, finish the workbook from the social media strategy sessions, cure cancer, feed the cat, go on vacation, water the plants. It doesn't matter. Just literally dump every thought that you have down onto paper or directly into your system. Once you do that, just that process alone, it literally clears your mind. However, if that information remains on a notebook instead of putting it into something like Asana, then you're still going to kind of be having open tabs on it. And what I mean by that is that your brain is still going to have to hold on to where you put that information. You're going to have to remember which notebook it was, around which page it was, all of these little details that are still going to keep it there because you have to go back to that information and find it in order to actually use it. However, if you then take that and put it on, everything that you wrote out, all those different things, and then you put it into Asana or you put it into Asana directly, then your brain can let it go because it is now captured in a place where you can find it. And the thing about using the technology like Asana is you don't have to remember which notebook it's in. You don't have to remember where you put the notebook. You just need to be able to have internet access. There's an Asana app on your phone. There's an Asana app through the web. There's Asana apps for the computer. Basically, if you can get internet, you can get to your Asana. And the cool thing about it is that there is a search feature. So if you know that you had wrote down some, you had research about the neuroscience behind brainstorming and you did a little bit of it and you kind of had some ideas. If you put it into Asana, all you have to do now is do a search for brainstorming and it's going to pull up any task that has the word brainstorming in it. And that is a super, super useful feature because then I know that once I put that into Asana, I can let it go. I don't have to think about it. I know where it is. Now, one of the next steps after doing the brain dumping is processing. And processing is a big process, right? So this is where you're going to need probably the most amount of your time. And this is what makes brain dumping really, really effective. Now, according to getting things done, you're supposed to process once a week and then review and do all these other steps. I personally don't do that. I do my processing when I have time because I don't always have same amount of time every week. I don't have a very structured week. A lot of things are floating around. Sometimes I have client meetings that are scheduled. They're usually the same time every week, but then sometimes things come up. We have to move things around or there's big projects coming up, whatever it is. I just don't always have the same time every week to be able to do this processing. So I do it when I have a chance. And I know that it takes me about an hour to 2 to really get in there and do it. I use the Pomodoro system. I break out about 40 minutes, then take a break for 5 minutes, and then 40 minutes, take a break for 5 minutes, then 40 minutes, and then I take a half-hour break. And that has always worked really well for me. I think it's actually 2 hours and 15 minutes is what it ends up being, but about that 2 hour mark. But it's enough time for me to really, really kind of get to everything. But as I said, so like brain dumping, the way I do suggest doing it when you're going to be using Asana is to have one big list, right? So it's anything that you don't know how to categorize it in the moment gets dumped onto that main brain dumping list. But I do suggest that if you're on social media, and you're a content creator, that you have a separate list specifically for your social media content. And if you have a blog or a weekly training or a podcast or something where you're doing like the hub content that I talk about in the social media strategy sessions, that you have a separate list for that as well. And the reason why is that when your brain dump can just kind of stay there, but you will want to process everything into those different, lists and categories. And having them separated already makes it just a little bit easier. You now don't have to go through your brain dump if you know that anytime you come up with a content idea, it gets dumped into your social media list. Or anytime you have an idea for a blog post, it gets dumped into that list. You then don't have to go through that big search if you haven't gotten around to doing your brain dump that week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, or just it's been a month since you've done it, because that happens sometimes. Then you don't have to struggle so much, or it's not even struggle. You'll spend a lot more time going through your main brain dump if everything is there. So that is really one of the keys to it. So you do want to have that main brain dump file for anything. So this is more about like all the little projects that you've got to do. Like maybe you need to create a template for your quotes. And then you also know that you need a template for your stories, and because that's not the content, right? That's not your social media content. That is like action step that you need to take. And that's when you go to process it, then you will figure out where to put that in. And if you're using Asana, I highly suggest having different projects for the different kinds of areas that you're working on. But when it comes specifically to creating content, you should have your list separated out, because it is going to be different. A lot of times, especially like with the hub content, you have this idea for hub content, and then from that hub content, you create your other micro content. And so you would then put that over onto your social media list at that point. But chances are you're creating much more social media content than you're ever creating hub content. And a lot of times we have these great ideas that we want to put out onto social media, but it's not the right time or the place. Like if you're working on one product, but you have another product that's going to be launching in 3 months, but you're working on the back end of things and getting it ready, chances are you're brainstorming and you're thinking of all these fun things that you're going to do on social media. Now's not the time to do that. So you want to capture them in a place where you can go back to them. You don't want to have to go back to your notebook and figure out which notebook you put it in, which day it was. Was that towards the beginning of the book, or was it the back of the book? Is it the middle of the book? Or now you're having to spend just 5-10 minutes just trying to find the page where you wrote that one idea that you knew was good. And you may look at it and be like, oh yeah, that's really not as good as I thought it was, because that does happen. So with the brain dumping, the second part of it, so you do that initial list, that second part is putting it into Asana. Now, one of the other things that I suggest you do weekly, if possible, kind of like before you do the processing, is go through all of your notebooks and transcribe everything that you see into Asana. I should have had one of my notebooks here handy so I could show you. But basically what I do, so for every page, when you go through it, sometimes the page is all related to one topic, and then you just type all that information into the one task in Asana, and then it's done. But sometimes there will be multiple ideas in there, so you're just still going to want to put those into the appropriate place. And then once you're done with that page, just write a line through it, and then it's already been captured. And so your brain can let go of that the open tab that you've been holding on to. And this process, honestly, it is seriously freeing. Like it provides the foundation to be able to create more and get more things done. For the last 10 years, solid 10 years, I've been a web developer, but along with doing web development, I worked for designers, like mostly graphic designers, and they often did all kinds of other projects. So I've done social media for a bunch of companies, and I've done the websites, obviously, for a bunch of companies. I've wrote blog posts. I've done a gazillion different random things, anything that has to do with technology, basically. And the